Hey everyone, welcome to my first painting video. I've always kind of wanted to do one of these, but I never really had the opportunity. So I want to put together something really easy for my first off one so I can kind of play with it. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be showing you some basing I'm doing on some Cultist models for the next chapter of Tyranny of Dragons. One thing that my Gen Z daughter did tell me though was do not skip cleaning the palette. People somehow really love when you scrape a palette and clean off all the paint. Apparently, it's relaxing to watch. But anyway, so these are the Cultist models that I'm going to be using. Originally, I had some 3D printed resin ones, but I do like to transition from resin to metal if I find good metal figures to use. One, mainly because I love the feel of metal in the hands, and the other thing is that resin breaks. So metal at least will have an opportunity, you could play with it. So these guys are Bloodspeakers from AEG's Clan War range, which, as anyone in the podcast will know, I have kind of an obsession with these models. They're not great models, but they work perfectly as cultists, kind of even better than the Reaper ones. But they have the hoods, they got some weapons, really easy to paint up, simple paint scheme with the purple, black, and green. I did these guys ahead of time just because I was playing around with the idea. These guys are unmatted. They are just strictly painted on with the inks. So we're going to start off on the bases right now. We're going to be doing this in a style that is similar to very, very classic Games Workshop. We're going to use three colors. First is the dark brown, which I believe back in the day would have been bestial brown for Games Workshop, but these are standard dark brown from Vallejo, game color charred brown, which I really enjoy. Mixing in some water, and of course going over the sand. The sand is just standard playground sand that I bought at Home Depot for a giant 12-pound bag for $1. I keep it out in my garage. But watering down the brown allows you to easily spread it across the sand. And one of the main reasons is that I do the sand ahead of time, at least 12 hours, is to let the sand, the glue completely cure. So we have the brown that's going over that, because if you don't let it completely cure, it's going to wipe the sand right off that base, which I did on one model. If you can catch it, it'll probably go really fast when I speed up everything, because there you go. But right now, one thing in particular is making sure that we're getting full coverage. Sometimes I go over on the feet. I don't care. The main reason is that these models are just going for D&D. These aren't going to win any awards. So I just do the paint as fast as I can. And in Universe, you could just say, well, they're walking in mud, so their feet are going to get dirty. So why not have brown on their feet? I don't purposely try to do it, but if it happens, I'm not going to cry about it. One thing to mention about these models is that AEG, when they were putting out the Clan War figures, one thing that they did, which was really impressive for the day and age, was they had a lot of female models in their range. At least one out of the 4 models of every unit was female, which was awesome. Games Workshop still to this day has issues in doing that. So consider AEG to be a little on the progressive side, even though their models are slightly more towards, I don't want to say offensive, but they definitely aren't as PC as you'd like them to be. Of course, these models were put out in 1999, so they were, just on that cusp, and when the age of everything being extreme with an X. For the main color, because now we're going to be doing some dry brushing with Parasite Brown, which is another one of the Vallejo game colors. This one is kind of the equivalent of what I would call snakebite leather from back in the day. Maybe a little bit more with the yellowish side, but it's kind of more of the classic. Now, I'm probably going to get a lot of crap about this, but I always use my hand when dry brushing with my 25-year-old Games Workshop dry brush that I still use. You could see that with the cameras picking up is a lot of yellow on there. It doesn't really quite look as yellowish as it picks up on camera. It's actually quite muted in there. And here you can see a little bit closer on it. Here we have a shot of the unit as a whole with just the browns on there. Next up, we're going to use the last color, which is Pale Sand from the game, from the model color range, not the game color. This is kind of like the equivalent of, I don't know, I think it was Screaming Skull back in the day. Doing the same thing where I'm just kind of brushing on my hand first, getting the majority of it off. When I'm doing dry brushing, I don't usually go like super dry on the dry brush. I believe more of a light hand is a little bit better off than, you know, heavier with a lot of the paint wiped off. And here you can see kind of what we're looking at. All right. Now the last stage with the actual painting itself is I'm going to be doing the rims of the bases black. So for most of my D&D minis I've been using round bases, but because these guys are from Clan War and Clan War has its own very specific type of square base, I went with the old school square base from Clan War instead. I figured it was a little more appropriate to do it that way. I'm going to do this on all the models, and then I have to wait for that to dry. I usually don't wait for the dry brush layers to dry because they will dry very quickly. So I just immediately go right into doing the bases. And here we are with the actual bases themselves, all dry brushed up. Nothing too fancy on there. Next up, we're going to add some Woodland Scenics Blended Turf. This is one of my favorite ones. One of my painting mentors, Tim, turned me on to this one specifically for the bases. Straight up white glue for the bases. Just glob it in there and go. This little tray I have here is a skirmish movement tray I 3D printed for some of my figures. Didn't end up using it, so I just use it right now for glue. Makes it a little bit easier for dipping. And I just glob it on there. I'm a 2 to 4 blob guy. Normally I do about 3, but sometimes I'll do 2 if I like to do 2 big ones, or 4 if I like to do 4 small ones, but usually I do about 2 bigger globs, 1 smaller glob. So I get about 3. Now this is using the cap. Tap off the model, and there we go. It's right on there. So I'm going to do this for the rest of the models. Now we're done with that. We're going to add 1 tuft. Now, I like a nice big bottle of the pink stuff, as I like to call it, the cyano acrylic. The extra thick, if you know what I mean. So, I like to put a little drop on the figure, usually either in the front or the back. And once that's on there, I take my tuft off the paper and plop it right on there. And usually I'll take a pair of tweezers and set it into the right location. I know, I don't have it super in focus right now. I apologize for that. And there we go, right in focus, right out of focus. And that's how he looks. So we'll finish up the rest of the models. Now, as you're watching this part, I want to tell you that after I'm done with all of this, I then airbrush Vallejo matte varnish onto the figures. Some people paint it on, or some people will mix it in, lighten it up. Me, I put it straight into the airbrush with a little bit of airbrush thinner and then I go over the models, and that's going to take care of all of that shine that you see on those models currently from the inks, which is a big deal because there is a lot of shine on these models. But the matte takes care of all of that. I like my figures heavily matted. As anybody who listens to the podcast knows, I like it so that mine absorb all light, like the black hole of figures when it comes to matting. All right, and here we go. Here's what the final models look like. Nice and painted, and here's how they look after photographed. You know, nothing special, but these guys are going to be great enemies for the actual campaign itself. So thank you guys for watching. I'm hoping to do more of these, like once I kind of get the hang of it. In the meantime, you can always tune into the Game Classy podcast and listen to me and Steve just talk about new gaming stuff that's coming out and what we're pretty much doing with our gaming lives. Or you can follow us on the Discord, and the Discord is a great place to get in contact with us about all sorts of things. Shout out to our free music that I downloaded for this, which is from Tabletop RPG Music. This song was the Song of the Elves from Mystic Tranquility. I love them. I use them all the time in my D&D games, and I hope that you guys go to them and support them as well. They have a great Patreon, and they did let me use this music for free from any sort of live streaming with the games, as long as I give them full credit, and that's what I'm doing. All right, guys. Thanks.